Okay, so let's look at plant responses. In our first session, we said that organisms, whether they are small, whether they are very complex, they do respond to changes within the environment. So these changes can be, it can be the extent of water content, it can be the temperature, it can be nutrients, it can be presence of a prey, it can be an internal change. Okay, and we gave examples. For example, when we feel thirsty, we go and drink water. What makes you feel thirsty? That is a change that is internal. So the same thing happens to plants. So how do plants respond? Okay, that's the purpose of this presentation. We are going to have we are going to look at these responses briefly, and we shall look at them one by one. Okay, so we want to see what these responses are, what initiates these responses, and how are these responses coordinated. Why these responses are actually very important. That's what we are going to look at. So, for us as humans, we have what you call the nervous system. Also animals, whether it is a goat, it can be any other animal, they still have the nervous system. So the nervous system is the one that detects the change in the internal or external environment, and then initiates the response. For plants, the plants do not have the nervous system. Okay, they do not have the nervous system, but they can still respond to the changes in the environment. So they use plants usually have what we call growth responses. Growth responses. They respond by growing. Okay, and this growth is initiated by hormones, and we call them plant hormones. And the one that we shall really focus on are the auxins. They are the auxins that control the growth of plants. So plants respond mainly through growth responses, and the growth responses are controlled by plant hormones, and the most important in this case that we're looking at are the auxins. Okay, so the plants do not move, but they exhibit growth response, and the auxins are the ones that respond, that play an important role in this response. Okay, we also need to note that it is not all the time that indeed the response has to be a growth response. Okay, so we have other types of responses which can involve either folding of the leaves, it can involve opening and closure of certain structures on the plant. So these also are important responses that can happen in plants. And let's first look at how auxins work. The first thing was that auxins control this plant growth response, and we say that the auxins are basically plant hormones, and they control growth. That's what we have agreed on. So how do they work? They work in a way that they result into cell elongation. They make the auxins and promote cell elongation. Okay, they make the cells longer. Okay, Now, the point that you need to note is that the way they result into cell elongation differs in accordance with the different factors. Factor number 1, sunlight. Factor number 2, touch. Factor number 3, in response to gravity, and also in response to chemicals, and also in response to moisture. Okay, so the key concept here is that plants do have auxins that influence their cell growth through auxins make the cells elongated. And however, the key aspect is that the distribution of these auxins, whether we're talking about the shoot of the plant or the root system of the plant, the distribution is influenced by a number of factors that we have just mentioned. And when we look at these growth movements, for example, later on, we will see how this distribution will happen, the influence of these factors on the distribution of auxins. It will become very clear to you. But the key concept is that for all the factors that we have mentioned, they cause an equal distribution of the auxins. Okay, so that means that the auxins will be more on one side and less on the other side. That's what it means, the unequal distribution. So where we have more auxins, we are most likely going to have the cells elongating, growing more. Where we have less, especially in the shoot, the cells don't grow at the same pace, or they grow slower as where compared to where the auxins are more. Okay, so that is how auxins work. Auxins promote cell elongation, and they are always produced around the tip of the shoot or the tip of the root systems, and the different concentration levels influence which part grows more compared to the other. If in the shoot, if you have more auxins, you're going to have more cell elongation. In the root system, if you have few auxins, then that's where you're going to likely have more elongation. We shall look at that in our subsequent lessons. So here we emphasize that plants can respond through growth movements, and they are the ones that we call tropisms. Okay, so the plant can grow towards unidirectional stimuli, or towards a directional stimuli, or away from a directional stimuli, and that is what we call tropisms. So the keywords, if I can highlight them here, highlighting them here on the screen, directional stimuli here. That means that the change in the environment comes from a particular direction. The change in the environment comes from a particular direction. So, for example, the plant will grow to a region where we have more sunlight. Okay, and that is a directional response. That is one of the types of tropisms that we shall look at, phototropism. Okay, this is one of the types that we shall look at. And then nastic or nestic movements. For them, the change in the environment or the stimulus is not having a particular direction. Okay, so the response is not dependent on the direction of the stimuli. That's why we are saying it is independent. The response is independent. That is what we emphasize here. Okay, independent of the direction of the stimuli. So we have a plant, for example, called Mimosa pudica. When you touch this plant, it folds the leaves. The leaves fall. So it doesn't matter where you have touched it. Okay, it will just fold. So that is an example of a nesting movement. And then the last type of response is what you call the tactic responses. These ones can happen in plants and also in animals. Okay, what happens is that the whole organism moves, okay, in response to the stimuli. So that response can be positive or negative. We said positive if it moves towards the stimuli, and negative if it moves away from the stimuli. Okay, so that is very important to note there. Okay, when we say lower organisms, I mean lower plants in this case, we are basically referring to plants that are not complex. The other words that we can use here, we can say these are simple plants. They're not very complex. They're just simple plants. Okay. So that marks the end of this presentation, where we have actually emphasized that plants do respond to changes in the environment. The changes can be the direction of the sunlight, it can be presence of chemicals, it can be forces, gravitational forces, it can be moisture content, it can be anything. Those are examples of stimuli that can cause a response from plants. And we said that the plants can respond through three ways. Through tropisms, where we are calling them growth movements towards a stimuli in a particular direction, and then nesting movements is when the response does not really care about the direction of the stimuli, and then the tactic response is when the whole organism moves. Okay, and this one is seen in lower animals and plants. Okay, and when we say lower plants, we are basically referring to plants that are not very advanced. We can use the word simple to illustrate that. Okay, so that marks the end of this presentation. Thank you.